Blues fans, to the Free Blue Boys podcast. Thank you to our viewers and listeners for joining us again. But of course, if you are new to the channel, please subscribe, like if you enjoyed today's video, and hit the bell notification button so you never miss a new upload from the Free Blue Boys podcast. While you're at it, why not drop us a follow on our social media platforms, links to which are on the screen for now and down in the description below. Good evening, gentlemen. We are somewhat not feeling the Monday blues so much today. Nice to be back to winning ways.
Yeah, it's finally there after what I think are winless in maybe 7 or 8 games, and unbeaten against Wrexham in 2 seasons. So at least we got that with the Hollywood derby over them. What a bunch of shit that is, in my opinion. But anyway, yeah, it was a solid victory. It was a good day out. All about the fact it was a 12 o'clock kickoff. But as we said in the post match, if a pint is available at 10 a.m, it will be drank.
It will be.
Vincente obviously on a bit of form at the minute, which is really nice to see. Being a January signing. It was a good performance, wasn't it? So it's just instilled a little bit of confidence with the boys in blue again, which I was happy to see with the run-in now.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, when we got back from the match, I had to go and look for the dictionary and see what the word winning meant.
Yeah.
Just to reassure myself that I did remember what it was about.
Yeah.
But joking aside, it was good to see that the players were very motivated for it. You could see that. I think they picked up where they'd left off in the second half against Ipswich. And the team itself, you know, they were on the front foot. They were powerful. They were first to the second balls, which really surprised me against Wrexham because that's their stock in trade. Really, that's what they do, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you know, to a man, all of them were doing that. And the front four, when they combined like some of the times they did yesterday, were a bit scary.
Yeah.
You know, they looked that good, didn't they? You know, and Stano at last, I feel like, and I think somebody else mentioned this on a different podcast, saying, at last, it looks like he's got some support. You know, some of the players around him that are going to read his runs, have the same work ethic, you know, and kind of work together as a unit. You know, That's what you need, isn't it? So, yeah, it was good stuff, and it's just nice to come away with a positive, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And you talk a little bit there, Dad, about, you know, Stansfield having the right players around him. Just to mention August Prisk as well. You know, I feel like he's the man that we've been missing, and he hasn't really had enough game time, has he, since January? Like, he's been coming off the bench a lot with 20 minutes to play. And he put himself about a lot yesterday. And the amount of headers that he won, I think Blues put a stat up, I can't recall it at this moment, but he won that many headers and got us moving up the pitch with the wingers running off him and Stansfield just behind him. And I feel like you really need a consistent team if you can do it as best as possible, particularly the front four, because how many people have come in and out, you know, all about the fact number 10, obviously Marvin Duksh, the club obviously dealing internally what's going on with him, but he's predominantly been playing in the number 10. And to mix that up, now finally a few games where the boys have actually played well after a really difficult period. We've got those front four players that are really stuck in there. Hopefully we can stick with that and produce some more results for the last 4 games. So
hopefully, and it was a word I used in the post-match from yesterday's game, having recording this on the Monday. It was a cohesive performance. Everybody clicked, and it was a team effort, which is something I think we've lacked for a while. Because like you say, Joe, there's been so much chopping and changing, particularly in the forward line, and probably the back line is the only other key area where we've seen so much change over the course of the season. And even lately, really, there's not been much consistency in that respect. And we talked about it, the centre-back pairing, just taking it to the defence for a moment, of Neumann and Clara. Best centre-back pairing we've got. I think they click together well. I think Robinson lacks discipline at times, and it can lead to issues, obviously, with the fact that we go down to 10 men. Leads to morale issues, I think, within the team as well. And maybe there's a bit of a rift between him and Davies going on as well at the time as well, because obviously he didn't re-emerge for the second half in the home game recently against Sheffield United. So that raises questions of its own as well. And Al, our producer, asked before we brought on the camera, is why wasn't Neumann starting to this? And I think there was a rift between Neumann and Davies earlier in the season. Hopefully bridges have been repaired there. So, and indeed, maybe he really has now that he's starting back in the team. But I think he's just better being next to Clara as well.
Yeah.
I think arguably our best back four that we've seen all season. The only thing I would change is I'd take Boz out, albeit he had a good game yesterday and nobody had a bad game, as it were. But I'd probably put Laird in. I think Laird offers us just a bit more, and he's a bit more of a fan favourite as well. I think Boz is a little bit too inconsistent at times, whereas Laird, albeit that he struggles with his fitness more than Boz does, he's more consistent.
Yeah,
and I think he offers more versatility as well. He's stronger, he's that little bit quicker, and he's just more experienced in this division as well. Albeit Boz is an international, I think he does make the difference. But you're right in what you say, Joe. Stansfield's starting to be rewarded now a little bit more by his teammates around him, because they're reading his runs, they're giving him the ball at his feet more. It's not call it one quick turn or pass like Dutch has been doing, and he's not finding Stansfield. Priska actually gets the ball down and he's winning headers as well, and he looks for a pass. He was magnificent yesterday. Really, really good game from him, and hopefully we'll see a little bit more because, like you say, he hasn't really had the game time, has he, to show his expertise? And there is a player there, definitely. And going forward, regardless of what the club do with Marvin Dutch from a PR perspective and internally, I'd still like to see Priska starting. I think he just offers more.
I think Stansfield as well, obviously his goal involvements this season speak for themselves. He's got players like Carlos Vicente, who's obviously done so well in a team that was, in the lower end of La Liga. Obviously you've got an interchangeable with Dimi Gray and Ibrahim Osman on the left, and Osman himself is another player. Absolutely. Obviously a young lad. He's got so much energy and he causes so many teams so much trouble when he's really on it. And listen, we said it in the post-match yesterday that his thing is his final product. Like a lot of young lads, it's not quite there. He's got so much time to develop that, and these boys just need time to adapt to the league. And not to talk too much about transfers and such like in the summer, but Osman, I'd probably like to have him in the squad definitely for next season. Obviously, Chris could really develop as well in the Championship next season.
I think so.
But if you can keep that where it is going into the end of this season, I think that'd be really vital too. It's obviously later on, different episode, we'll obviously touch on the transfers during the summer. But, with all that cohesion there, and the manager's a whole other subject, isn't it? But with all that cohesion there, and if you can get those players round someone that's got goal involvements when we've really been struggling to get goals, I feel like Priska's got goals, and it's a shame he had a header on target, didn't he, yesterday?
He did, yeah.
Didn't manage to put it away, but I'm sure his goals will come for him next season. But yeah, like you say, the general feeling is bittersweet, isn't it? I think we said that before. Obviously, you guys in the comments on the post-match were pretty much in agreement with ourselves. It's good to get the win, but by no means has it been a successful season, particularly that of which that was outlined by Knighthead and Tom Wagner himself. For me, it's I'm a little bit unsure because I don't really think you should be starting a season when you come up from League One saying we're definitely going to be competing in the top two, or we're definitely going to be competing for this or that. Because if you fail that, you fail the fans, and the expectations are really high for them to be let down. If nothing was said, I don't really know what we would all think at this point, or about the fact that we spent a lot of money. It's just not something you should say. I think they've got to leave that really quiet for next season, in my opinion.
I think it's a bit of a cultural difference. I think, probably a lot of British people kind of like to undersell things a little bit, don't they? Aim low and overachieve kind of thing, whereas the Yanks come in and they want to kind of, go in all guns blazing.
It's all fuck yeah, Eagles, isn't it?
It is, yeah, soaring over St Andrews at Knighthead Park.
Yeah.
Because that, particularly the two guys we're talking about, they've been very successful in their personal lives and their professional lives, So they're going to say, and there's a counter argument here, isn't there, to say, maybe if we are going to be ambitious, maybe we should just, have balls out kind of ambition there and just say that this is what we're going to go for. Mm-hmm. And if you fail, and you have the inquest afterwards, but don't be afraid of saying it. Now, I see the merits of both points, really.
Yeah, I do, absolutely.
But the truth of the matter here is, and obviously, it's come up in comments back at the post-match yesterday, is the elephant is still in the room, as it were. In fact, it's taken over the room and trampled it now about kind of everybody's happy about a win, but does that change the overall picture? And I'm going to spell this out a little bit in terms of, I don't want to speak on behalf of you two, but certainly as I see it about Chris Davies, here's the issue in two parts for me, right? One is, will he just revert back? And we had somebody say to us after the game about this, didn't they? Is he just going to revert back? Now he's got himself back into a comfort zone. Is he going to go back into tippy-tappy, high-possession football? Another game we won yesterday with less than 50%, Yep. And that's adaptation. Is his adaptation going to kind of follow through now? Is he actually convinced? Because there were times this season, full stores, where we thought he'd learnt his lesson. The other thing that I'm concerned about going forward is man management. I still worry about his ability to motivate people when the chips are down, when we've not been playing well, when we've been under pressure. Now the kind of pressure's off because we're not fighting for anything anymore. Yep. Maybe he's kind of, easier going around the players and stuff like that. And that's a concern because that's not going to go away. That pressure's going to remain, isn't it? So
absolutely.
That's how I spell out my concern about him. If anybody's wondering why, we'd still maintain that position despite a good result, that doesn't change.
If you'd like to sponsor the Free Blue Boys podcast, you can get in touch via our social media platform or via our email address. Thanks very much. Now back to the podcast.
Yeah, there was definitely, I think the general consensus is that for the most part. I mean, another post-match I watched from some of the guys is they said the same thing, like, where was that 10 games ago? And I think we said word for word the same thing. And like I say, the general feeling is that, but it's always the way. When the pressure is on and the teams that don't go up and do well, they do fail up those hurdles. And listen, we had that 10-game run, didn't we, where we played the teams that were really struggling or in the lower end of the table. When we played the likes of Millwall and Middlesbrough, and obviously Norwich were doing well at the time we beat them. It was the last time we won, where we were obviously around the playoffs. But when we've been met with the really difficult teams, or by Coventry at home, we failed. And that just shows that maybe there's a problem, like you say there, Dad, with motivating the players, that Chris Davies struggles with. I think some of it, to be honest, is a little bit of quality in the right moments, because our conversion rate is really poor, and we've got some of the highest shots in the league. I think like 795, something like that we've got, and our conversion rate is like 6.2 or something like that, compared to Hall's, which I'll get onto later. And it's no good at all. And how many times have we hit the woodwork? Like 18 or something like that.
Yeah.
It just shows that it definitely is. I'm not advocating saying, it's not Chris Davies. It's not all one thing. There's a few things as to why
it's a collective,
it's happening.
isn't it,
exactly
at the end of the day. And that's what it is. And I think out of the 2 points you made there, Dad, the bigger one for the two is the lack of man management skills, or the perception their lack of. Because if you're struggling to motivate a group of players, have ability and want to play and are young and hungry and want to succeed, you've got a problem.
Yeah.
You're not going to get that success out of them, regardless of what system you play. They're not going to play for a manager they don't feel motivated by. And then this is more of the key issue of the two, because you can coach players into systems or try to get them to fit into systems as much as it has been square pegs in round holes this season, at least to some degree. But if you can't motivate players at the very base of it, it's just not going to happen.
No.
You can have some of the best technical players in the division, but if they don't feel as though they've got the backing and the confidence of their manager, it's just not going to come to fruition. And that's been, I think, a bigger the wider issue for Blues this season. Davies is, at least on paper, appears to be a tactically astute manager, or at least that's how he's marketed. At least that's the way he puts his philosophy across. But even that hasn't come across well this season. And again, it's just square pegs in round holes. You look at the game yesterday. How much was the ball fed forward from the wing backs into the wingers, and we were cutting them up on the wide areas that generally Wrexham are strong in, and we were competing far better than they were. We were better in the air as well, feeding the ball up to Priska, knocking it down for Stansfield. And like you say, Joe, the real frustration of yesterday's game, and of course, as I mentioned before, recording this on the Monday, is where was this 10 games ago? And if so, why aren't we doing this 10 games ago?
Yeah, I think.
And like you say, Dad, it's a comfort zone thing for Davies. He just reverts into back and what he knows. It's like, well, this is succeeding. Do this.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I think, to be honest, just talking there, Dan, obviously about the game against Wrexham, and obviously they were really poor, weren't they? We were really surprised. You guys were. We were pretty surprised.
It was a bit 6 and 2 threes. We were good.
Yeah.
We were decent enough. I wouldn't say we were good. I'd say we were probably better against Coventry, actually. Yeah, but they were poor.
But that's part of the issue, is that we come up against teams on the day where they're just not at it for whatever reason, whether in the top 6 or not, and we kind of just turn up and we win by a goal. Obviously, it was nice to see we won by a few goals yesterday, but we've never come up against someone that is just that good on the day and shows they can really play and they can adapt the style based on what we're doing and outsmart them and out-tactic them.
Yes.
His inability to do that has really cost us this season, and that does come from the manager. So talk a little bit about quality, particularly in the middle, that I think we need. We'll also get on that in another video that we do in the future, but his ability to not adapt game-by-game basis, and listen, your actions talk more than your words. No matter what he says about, I'm happy to do this, I'm happy to do that, he just hasn't proven that this season, and we've needed it when we've needed it to get into the top 6, and that's the reason we failed. Yeah,
I think the only game, going back to what you said there, and it's a good point, where we've actually performed better than a team that played well was against Watford at home.
Yes.
That was probably my favourite win of the season, because they were a very awkward kind of team to play against. And they've dropped off weirdly as well, because I thought they'd be around it.
I thought they'd push on.
I think they lost. Did they lose on Saturday? I think they might have done, mightn't they?
I think it was
they did.
1-0 or something like that.
Yeah, I think they did, but I can't remember who it was against. One of the teams lower down, I think. But the bottom line is that you are right, that when we've come up against teams who are absolutely at it on the day and they've got quality, we just don't seem to have. It's borne out by the fact that we've only won one game this season where we fell behind.
Yeah,
and that's another damning statistic, isn't it? On lack of motivation, And And it's okay being ahead, but you're not going to be ahead all the time. You've got to find some resilience when you inevitably fall behind, because it will happen on a regular basis. You know? Even the teams at the top have had to fight back and do it.
I mean, that goes part and parcel what you said there, Dad, about our ability to come back from when we've been pegged back by a goal or two. It also links in the fact that we don't change our style. If you do the same things, you expect the same results. And that's the reason we found it difficult to get back into games. Like, if we go 1 or even better 2 up like we did against Wrexham, you know, on the day you can say, okay, I can probably expect us to hold our lead. As you say, the stat backs it up. When we've gone ahead, we've only lost once, didn't we, this season?
Yeah.
So that backs it up. But we've got to find the resilience to come back into games. And that's something I want to see into the last few games, and obviously going into next season if we can fix that issue.
Yeah.
Obviously, the game where, you know, obviously we'll talk a little bit about Hull City, we've got coming up next, but that's a game where we had them at home, the reverse fixture, where they were there for the taking. Obviously, Jack Robinson sending off, mentioned earlier, you know, with his mentality and such like that cost us that game.
Yeah.
But that one's another one in itself where it's like they were arguably a better team, but we should have beaten them.
Yeah. On the day, we should have done.
Yeah.
We were, by and large, throughout the course of the game, the better team.
Yeah.
It's just that you said, that lack of discipline from Robinson, again, another instance of where I don't think he fits into that back four quite as well as Neumann and Clara at the centre-back pairing, where it's cost us against a team that, despite being the better team, at least on paper, on the day we were better and we played better. And your argument to say, like you say, Joe, at least a point, maybe even 3 out of it, we could have pushed on.
Yeah.
So, I mean, bearing in mind, Hull City, even though our home record isn't quite as well as the Speakers as it was last season, but you're playing a different calibre of player, different opposition in the level between League One and the Championship, of course. But they're only one of the 2 teams to have beaten us at home this season.
Yeah.
Obviously, the other one being Blackburn, and we discussed that game
and
previously.
Borough.
Borough,
yeah.
of course, you had 1 of 3 actually. Sorry, Dad. Thank you for correcting me there.
It's all right.
So it begs the question, like you say, Joe, with that level of application where our pragmatism, at least from Davis's perspective, hasn't kicked in, where and a very damning statistic, like you say, Dad, where we've only ever come backwards for a result where we've been in a losing position.
Yeah.
And it's just, and you look at the other managers and you look at the way they approach that situation, they change things up.
Yeah.
You look at the way that Wrexham, when they were 2-0 down at West Brom, they changed it at half time.
Yeah.
They got a point out of it. You just think if that was Davis in the same situation, you just wouldn't do nearly the same thing. You'd wait till the 75th minute to bring on a couple of players that really aren't going to impact the game in the way that they need to, instead of making a change at half time.
Yeah.
It's that reluctancy to change things at the time when you really need it to happen.
You mentioned Albion there. They're a perfect example in the last 5 or 6 games of...
Well, they've changed things massively.
Yeah, of just basically making it work with what they've got. And you've touched on this, Dad. Work with the tools that you've got, and they've done that. And, you know, a former player has come in there and said, look, we're going to galvanise ourselves and put it together. Obviously, they've still got a bit of work to do. Obviously, Oxford winning and Blackburn have put themselves together a bit as well, and Portsmouth as well. You know, but that's an example of it, and we don't do that enough. You know, they're 10 points behind us, and they're not even that now, and they've found a way, and we haven't done that enough this season. And at home, you know, got mauled by the Tigers, and that was 3-2, as we just talked about there. But they themselves have been a bit of a funny team, particularly in the first half of this season. I think they've got 8 draws, so they very rarely draw at all. They basically win and loss most games. That's a reflection of probably the amount of goals that they score and the goals that they also let in. They just seem to be outscoring people, doing an Ipswich from a few seasons ago. But as you touched on there, in the reverse fixture, we should have won that, all but the fact that we had a sending off. But they've been in the mix, and obviously we did them a good favour, didn't we? Obviously beating Wrexham on the weekend.
We did.
And now we're going to hopefully not do them any favours at the MKM Stadium.
And help Wrexham.
And help Wrexham, ironically enough, so it's back to front, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is.
But quality over the pitch, Joe Goldhart stands out for me. We've watched a few of their games this season, haven't we?
Yeah.
17 involvement and 13 goals to the name himself, on loan from Leeds, obviously. He's a fantastic player every time I've seen him, and he'll be a real one to watch out for. I mean, obviously our away form speaks for itself, doesn't it, this season? But if we can go there with the same intensity, you know, and application, you know, there's a fellow podcaster of ours that, you know, talks about the fight. We need that fight away, and we have to continue that. We had it at Ipswich. Yeah. Can we go there to Hull and do it?
Yeah, I mean, it's viable. I mean, what I would say about Hull, and going back to that game that we lost 3-2, is that the big difference between the two teams was attacking intent. They bombed forward all the time.
They do.
But their finishing was very good, and I think that's been a tale of this season for them, and evident by the fact you mentioned Geldart there. You know, Ollie McBurney, bargain of the season, Like, you know,
Absolutely.
and there were some Blues fans clamouring for him, and they got shouted down during the close season. I mean, look what the guy's done: 21 goal involvements.
Yeah.
You know,
Speaks for itself, doesn't it?
So, you know, he scored 14. He's the top scorer at the moment.
He's a classic centre forward.
He is,
strong,
absolutely.
holds the ball up, got goals in him from anywhere.
Yeah.
That's the kind I would like to see.
He's galvanised them, hasn't he? You know, and they've added a bit of quality here and there. You know, different Carl Joseph players, and I think he's got 8 goals as well this season. So they're a decent team. You know, they're good on the counter attack. They attack from the wings. We've seen what Lewis Kumas has done when he's been there. You know, the trouble with Lewis Kumas is he's a little bit like Ozzy actually, and there's a lot of pace, a lot of trouble it can cause people, but the end product always you know is questionable. But they've got that on both sides, you know, and that's how they attack people, and that's where they've got the goals from this season. That Burnley scored a lot from crosses. Where they could be got at, and I was a bit surprised to kind of read this and doing some background stuff, is in aerially. Now, McBurney's good aerially, but that's obviously in attack. I think the issue is more at the back, and set pieces, defending them has been an issue for them. And I was thinking about what happened yesterday, you know, in us scoring from a cross, scoring from a corner, and we've kind of just under the radar started to get a bit better at set pieces over the course of the season.
Seemingly.
Started off badly, and it just started to bit by bit to improve, and I think that could be a threat. Now, the other thing is clearly they're the home team. They've got to win. They're in a position where they've got to win the game to keep the heat off them from Wrexham and Derby and people like that.
Yeah.
So they're going to come at us, and that will leave gaps.
Yeah.
And that the way we're playing at the moment is that helps us.
Yeah.
So the two things there, counter-attack, you know, with speed, and set pieces could help us potentially get a very good result there.
Yeah, I think the hold-up play with Prisk when we do have the ball could also be very important, because they're probably going to let us have the ball, and the fact that they're not a team that really keep possession themselves. I don't really mind it if we do have the ball and we can pump it long to Prisk, get it to the wide areas and get crosses in that way. And as you mentioned there, Dad, if that's a way we can hurt them, then that's the best way we can do it. I mean, we have to do our best to limit them to, you know, any opportunities at all. Obviously, we do that. Everyone does that every game. But my point is that their conversion rate, as I mentioned earlier, I think they've had something like 625 shots this season, and their conversion rate is the highest in the division with 10.4%. Obviously, that doesn't sound a lot, but I think closest to them is like, I think Cov with 9.2. So it's nearly, it's a 0.8% off or something like that. So we cannot let them get in on us, and that's a reflection of the reverse fixture and the fact that I think they had 3 shots on goal and scored them all.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. It's that criticality, isn't it? And being clinical in front of goal. That a lot of teams in this division actually lack, us especially, in some cases over the course of the season. When you look at it in that way, and like you say, Coventry been the closest team to that, and they're the highest goal scorers in the division.
Yeah.
So that speaks for itself. But like you say, Dad, the wide play is going to be key in this game. It's probably going to be very competitive. It's going to be a test of Bowles, assuming he does start, and we'll get into the lineup shortly as well. Wagner, I've got a lot of confidence in Wagner, so I'm not too worried about him. Obviously, the only other area of weakness that they've got, other than the wide areas, which they press on a lot, but it depends on how they set up really as well, is going to be the aerial duels as well. Yeah. And considering now that, like you say, we've slipped under the radar now in terms of we've got a lot more competent with set pieces, get the ball out to the wide men or drop it in high to Prisk, try and win free kicks out wide so you can whip it in, either through Wagner, and you've also got Vicente as well, who could whip it a decent cross as well for the wide areas as well, and try and win some duels in the air that way. Bomb on forward as well, with set pieces as well, with Priska, Neumann, Clara as well. Cause problems in the box.
I think we play like a classic away
You've almost
team.
got to start like the home team going there. But like you say, Joe, you've got to limit them to opportunities because they are clinical in front of goal. Yeah. You've only got to get a goal or two in the first half, and you do wonder where the players' heads are going to drop. Davis might revert as well to his comfort zone, and we might not see changes till later in the game, and at that point the game's gone. You want to quiet the home crowd because, like you said, the pressure is on them. They've got to win.
Yeah.
They've got Wrexham to keep off their tails as well. They've got Derby breathing down the neck, Southampton as well. It's really congested in that part of the table, and anything could happen. And you almost think as well, with the amount of goals they concede as well, and the amount of draws they've had this season, kind of wonder how they've ended up the way that they are, and they still maintain their position in the playoffs. But like you say, Joe, their advantage is how critical they are in front of goal and how many goals they do score.
Yeah,
and it's the conversion rate is what's kept them in there, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's one of them. Like you say, you mentioned about the home crowd there. If we can go there and do a classic away performance in terms of the frustrating them, the pressure's on them. There is no pressure on us. And
they've got to come out then, and like you say, it leaves gaps.
Yeah, that's it. We have to exploit that. And I just want to see us do a bit of the dirty side of the game. We don't do that enough this season.
We don't mix it up
even
enough,
sure.
That's the problem.
I'm not even sure we've got the personnel to do it often enough. You know, Pate kind of does it at home a little bit. He goes away and he's in no man's land.
John Solis is arguably the only one in the medal who does it,
really.
he
puts his foot about, doesn't he? But I want to see us do a little bit of that side of the game. If we can do that and frustrate them there, then I think we've got a good chance.
How's it going, fellow Blues fans? Hope you're enjoying the channel so far and liking today's video. I wanted to take a minute of your time to talk about our sponsor, Bangla Lounge Indian Cuisine. For these three blue boys, Bangla Lounge has been the go-to choice to enjoy the very finest in Indian cuisine for over a decade now. Made with the freshest ingredients using authentic recipes, Bangla Lounge produces some of the best Indian cuisine that I've ever tasted. And if you enjoy takeaway at the end of the week, orders for collection and delivery with a 15% discount, ordering direct through the website. If you enjoy a sit-down meal, you can enjoy this for a 2-for-1 offer, running up for Sunday to Thursday every week on main courses. Or if you're celebrating a special occasion, such as a birthday, Bangla Lounge offers a buffet restaurant every Sunday, running from 5:30pm to 10pm. So if you like a tasty curry or a sizzling tandoori, get yourself down to Bangla Lounge Halesowen. Links in the description below of our video. And if you would like to fine dine after a win in the B9. Thanks very much. Now back to the podcast.
Line-up wise, and Dad, you've got any more to add in terms of Hull or
No,
ourselves?
I don't think so. I mean, while you were talking, I was thinking about lineups, and it didn't take me long to kind of think about it, really. I just thought, same team.
I would agree.
I'd agree.
I'd start with the same team.
Yeah,
and I know people will argue about Bars and Laird and stuff. I think Laird's been managed closely because of the hamstring stuff.
I would tend to agree with you there, Dad.
I think they're trying to limit his exposure because it's unnecessary now, isn't it? You don't need to force him to play. Just manage it through. Get him having another pre-season. I think last closed season, didn't he do some extra training of some sort?
Yeah, he did.
I think he did.
He trained with a couple of other Premier League fullbacks, and I think he was in Spain or something like that.
Yeah.
So, like you said, Ed, it's a precarious position for him, and we want to make sure he's well managed because he'll be vital to us next season. I would assume he's going to be the right back and someone to compete with him, whether it be Boz or not, I don't know. But I would agree with you. The only thing I want to throw in there is, whether you disrupt it or not, because it is the goalkeeper position, is Rocky. I'm a fan of his over Beadle, if I'm completely honest. I know Beadle's improved a lot. But for me, there can't be too much room of this player's developing and that player's developing.
Yeah.
Particularly in goal. We have to have someone who, shot stopping and keeping it out of the net is the number one priority. But we miss Rocky's distribution.
I'd agree.
We really need that, and particularly away. If you're going to pump balls long, you can't fucking go out every 5 seconds. Get it into Prisk and then have the layoff with the wide areas. We have to do that, and that's the only change I'd personally like to see.
The only other change I'd like to see as well, other than that, maybe that as well, like you say, from a distribution perspective, Allsop is the better choice between him and Beadle because, like you say, you want to get it out into the wide areas, and the amount of times as well. Yesterday's game against Wrexham, where it would not quite reach the man, it would be too easy for Wrexham to meet with their head and defend it, and then either it would go out of play. And you said it, didn't you, in the course of the game? It'd just be like, why don't we have Allsop in this situation? Yeah. It'd just be so much better if we're going to be using the wide men. But I'd like to see Iwata coming out and Pate going into place alongside Solis.
Yeah.
I just think those two pair up a lot better. The defined roles are a little bit more clearer between the two. And I think in terms of his distribution, Pake offers more going forward as well. He finds the wide men better. Yeah, exactly that. I mean, he fed the ball over to Wagner to then get on to Carlos Vicente's head for the first goal. Yeah. So that speaks volumes. Arguably, you might see that. It depends on how much, because I know Iwata came off because he took a bit of a knock to his hamstring. So potentially, if that hasn't healed up, you might see Pake started. Definitely need to start with Solis in there. You definitely need somebody that's going to break up the play, and he's good with his feet, so he'll bring the ball back the other way as well and bring it forward. That's the only change I'd like to see. But aside from that, I don't see the need to change anything else.
No. Score prediction on the back of that, Dan?
I think it's going to be a very close game. I don't think there's going to be much in it. I think coming off the back of our momentum of the win over Wrexham, players are going to be up for it, at least that's what we're hoping. Hull have got it all to play for, and they're going to be up for it as well with the home support behind them. I think we're going to see it play out with a couple of goals each. I think it'll be a 2-2 draw.
Goal scorers?
I think Priska will grab his first league goal. I think we'll see another one from Carlos Vicente.
Very nice, Dad.
That's spooky. That's like you just read my fucking mind then, Dan.
Really?
Honestly, yeah. Before you said any
Mystic
of that,
Dan.
I thought it's like, that was like telepathetic. That was
transferred
really,
across,
it was
transferred power.
I was going to say another goal for the Ginger Ninja, and August to get his first one, and 2 will draw. I think there will be goals in it because I think
definitely
they always seem to have problems kind of keeping clean sheets. You know, they've got slightly better at it than they were before, but they're still a bit porous. But they do score goals, you know, and I think they'll find a way at home to be able to score goals. They have got to win, so they'll be on the front foot. So yeah, I'll go with Dan on that one. And if we end up being right, Dan, that's a bit weird.
Well, I'm going to be a little bit more pessimistic, so apologies in advance for that. But I'm just going on the back of the, you know, okay, we've had a couple of good games in a row. Hull score a lot of goals. We don't score many away. And our away form in general has just not been that good. We don't do any well there anyway for the most part. I'm going to go 3-1 to Hull. Goal scorer for Blues, I'm going to go with August Prisk to get his first for sure. But I just think they'll have too much for us, to be honest. I think, you know, some of the players we mentioned there and their goal involvements, I think they'll probably score first, and if they do, I expect they'll probably walk away with 3 points, because our inability to get back into games we're behind will probably prove true. I'd like to think you guys are going to be correct, or even better than that, but I'm going to stick with the 3-1.
I don't think it's so much pessimistic in some ways, Joe. I think it's probably more realistic. Like you say, when you look at it on paper, how many goals they score, how strong they are at home, and how poor we are normally away, and the lack of goals that we score, it's probably more the realistic storyline out of the two, of the three prescriptions that we've made. Obviously, me and Dad have gone for the 2-2 draw and the same goal scorers, oddly enough, as you say, Dad. But we can but hope, and of course we will be back with our post-match reaction to that game on Saturday away at Hull City.
Indeed.
Gentlemen, as always, thank you for your contributions. It's been
sir.
most enjoyable as always.
Yeah, good to be back. We'll be back on the podcast, because I missed the last one,
You did, yeah. You did.
It's probably been a month since the three of us were in the studio.
Yeah.
Actually.
I think it does feel like that, doesn't it? It's
like,
around about. I was thinking about this today.
Yeah, we must have done that a month ago. Then 4 with Jay, and then 2 with me and Dan, because you've been ill. I think this is the first time in probably a month.
It was weird coming in here and just suddenly the lights completely changed.
It has.
So it was like,
it's nice, isn't it, though?
Yeah, it's good stuff. So, yep, we march on to the MKM.
Indeed,
we do indeed. And Blues fans, in the comment section, let us know what you think the starting 11 will be going into Saturday's game against Hull City. Will Chris Davis change anything? Does he need to? Score predictions as well, and goal scorers for Blues as well. If you've enjoyed today's video, please drop it a like, subscribe if you haven't done so already, and hit the bell notification button so you never miss a new upload from the Free Blue Boys podcast. Also, drop us a follow on our social media platforms, links to which are on the screen for now and down in the description below. But until next time, Blue Noses, stay true to the Royal Blue and keep right on.
Keep right on.